13. Telepathy and UFOs. Telepathy was not one of the subjects included by Captain Mackay in his Flying Saucer Review article. I have since learnt that in his view, this was more a mental faculty than a paranormal one. On the other hand, one of the early pioneer workers in the telepathic field, Dr. J.B. Rhine, has long held the view that telepathy is non-physical. In some ways, too, it has close links with telekinesis, a subject listed by Captain Mackay. So, we feel it is important to discuss telepathy here. Webster's International Dictionary states this about telepathy: tele, a combining form from Greek, meaning far, far off, used to denote operating at a distance; pathy, a combining form from Greek, pathia, meaning liability to feeling. It is now some years since the pioneering work of Dr. J.B. Rhine at Duke University, in the USA, and that of Dr. J. Sowell at Cambridge University, in England. Since then, a great deal of progress has been made. Both the United States and Russian military authorities are known to be working overtime on paranormal research, including telepathy. The USSR has an official laboratory in Leningrad conducting research into extrasensory perception, including telepathy. It would seem that telepathy is now taken seriously by scientists and the military authorities, both in the West and in the East. Now, if we can take telepathy as a scientific fact, then some of the contactee reports that have been reported over the last 2 decades in which telepathic communication is involved, should also be regarded a little more seriously than hitherto. It is important to realize a point that stands out in regard to telepathic communication between UFO nauts and our own people. There tends to be among those potentially telepathic on this planet a slant towards being receivers rather than senders. For instance, in the annals of ufology there is case after case where some person felt an impulse to go up a hill or to some particular spot. There is the classic story of Stephen Derbyshire. He suddenly felt an urge to go up into the fells on the lower slopes of Coniston Old Man in the Lake District on a damp day in February, 1954. He took his 8-year-old younger cousin, Adrian Meyer, with him. The idea was to go birdwatching. Stephen took his box camera along too. They might be able to get some snaps of birds. As they climbed the slopes, it was Adrian who suddenly caught Stephen by the arm and pointed to a saucer-shaped object flying straight down towards them. Stephen managed to get 2 photographs of the object. One of these showing the UFO hovering just above the ground still remains one of the best pictures ever taken of a flying saucer. Here is a report from Huánuco, Peru. At 5 a.m., on September 1, 1965, a foreigner who was unwilling to give his name for publication, saw a UFO of oval-shaped land, at very close range, on an airstrip belonging to a big estate. An entity emerged, some 85 centimeters high, and with a head twice the size of ours. Seeing the man, the creature began to gesticulate, and make signs as though trying to communicate. Failing to make himself understood, the being re-entered the machine, which became luminous and then vanished straight up into the sky. The interesting point is that, beforehand, the man had experienced a strange sensation which seemed to impel him to go to the spot where the craft had landed. Note: Mr. Donald Hanlon, who forwarded this account to Flying Saucer Review, states that his Peruvian correspondent knows the witness in the above story. There are numerous other examples of people who have felt impelled to go to a certain spot where they came upon a landed UFO. Additionally, there are many cases on record of contactees having telepathic conversation with UFO entities. Adamski, Beth Urim, Darren Berger and many others. Their accounts can be read in other books. When I earlier described a personal sighting of a UFO, reference was made to the fact that after the object had gone my head was full of ideas. It could be argued that this was a coincidence or that the high state of excitement produced by witnessing a UFO caused me to think very rapidly about the subject. All I know is that my head was full of ideas. There have been other people who have received inspiration and ideas through either seeing a UFO or having a contact. A person who comes to mind is the late Wilbert B. Smith, former head of the Canadian Project Magnet. If the UFO nauts can impress upon someone to go up a hill or to go out of doors and look up into the sky, then it is more than probable that they can go further and inject the germ of an idea which will trigger off a whole train of thought. Most people are potentially telepathic. It seems that our telepathic faculty is lying latent in us, But like muscles that have not been used for some time, it has atrophied. We rely now so much on material communication systems, the telephone, the cable and the telegraph, and above all, on language, that our telepathic ability has been neglected. All these communication systems are really extensions outwardly of what we already possess inside us. It would appear that the UFO nauts, many of them, are skilled in the art of telepathy. This is their basic method of communication among themselves. Some even speak our languages. That should not present any great difficulty, as they have probably monitored our radio and TV programs for some decades. What they must make of them heaven only knows. 14. The windows in UFOs. The controversy continues over whether the UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin, that is from other planets in the galaxy, or whether they come from invisible universes interpenetrating our own. The answer may be a mixture of both these theories. During the last 25 years, UFOs have been seen over atomic research stations, military installations, airports, the oceans, lakes and rivers, cities, hospitals, schools, farms and isolated areas. You name it. The UFOs have observed everything. They have buzzed our aircraft, paced motor cars and have even been seen to dive into the sea. Earlier, we stated that our astronauts have seen them many times, and photographed them. However, one point has steadily emerged over the years. It is this. They seem to have concentrated persistently over centers of magnetic deviation. That is, where there are magnetic faults on the Earth's surface. At first, it was thought that they were watching those areas as being prone to earthquakes. There was some justification for this thinking, as many UFOs have been spotted flying around such areas after an earthquake. For instance, UFOs were seen over the Midlands in Britain on February 11 and 12, 1957. 5 tadpole-shaped objects were observed in the Mansfield area after earth tremors there. The new thinking on this is that these areas of magnetic deviation are in many cases actually windows through which the UFOs manifest to our vision. Now, it is appreciated that this idea may be difficult for the average person to accept. Fair enough. However, the very idea of spacecraft, not made on Earth, coming from somewhere else, is difficult to accept too, for many people. This subject is vast, quite outside the ken of most people, and that is what makes it so fascinating. When the truth is finally known, it will turn out to be even more fantastic than any science fiction tale. Let us not forget that many of the ideas expressed by science fiction writers, old-timers such as H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, have now come about in real life. Someone once stated that nothing is impossible. The impossible only takes a little longer to come about. Now, the UFOs have persistently been seen over many window areas on the Earth. The famous Bermuda Triangle in the Gulf of Mexico is a good example. In a recent book of mine, it was related how many U.S. Air Force planes, and a subsequent rescue one sent to find them, all disappeared without a trace. Further instances of both planes and ships disappearing in this area are on record. Another well-known window is the Devil's Triangle in the Pacific, near Japan. John Keel has listed in the USA the following ones: Kearney, Nebraska, Waunakee, New Jersey, and Ravenna, Ohio, although he adds that there are actually 1 or 2 windows in each state. There is a well-known fault line which runs down the whole of the west coast of North America and extends into South America. This is the San Andreas Fault Line going through California. San Francisco had a terrible earthquake in 1906. It continues down through the Andes into Peru. In 1970, a catastrophic earthquake occurred in Peru, resulting in 70,000 dead or missing, and at least 1 million homeless. Draw a line on a map from Lake Titicaca, which is situated on the borders of Peru and Bolivia, to Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. Incidentally, Lake Titicaca is a highly significant area. Nearby is the Gate of the Sun at Tiahuanaca, 12,000 feet up in the high Andes. No one knows for certain how this extraordinary edifice came to be built, with 200-ton stones and bearing on its facade a most remarkable calendar which M. Kazantsev, the Russian scientist, stated was not of this earth, but Venusian. Then, draw another line from Cusco, also in Peru, to Caracas, in Venezuela. The segment that you have just out negation lined is a remarkable area where numerous landings have occurred, and is full of countless terraces and enchanting valleys. Most of the area is little explored. In England, there is Warminster, Wiltshire already referred to in another chapter, where many UFO sightings, reported landings and poltergeist activities have occurred during the last few years. It is significant that on Lord Bath's estate at Longleat, Warminster, there is an area known as Heaven's Gate. There are many more windows. The Himalayas, the Gobi Desert, the Dordogne area in France, and many others. It is now thought that due to a warp in the magnetic field around these window areas, the UFOs are able to manifest from other spacetime continuums. The most informed study in depth of these windows has been made by Ivan T. Sanderson, the famed scientist and naturalist. An account of his work with other scientists in this field is given in his remarkable book, Invisible Residents. The windows mentioned so far in this chapter, with two exceptions, are minor ones, compared with what Sanderson terms vile vortices. He pointed out that both the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Triangle are misnamed, because neither of these areas are triangular, but lozenge-shaped, and the so-called Bermuda Triangle is not centered on the island of Bermuda at all. Sanderson and his friends have discovered a total of 10 major lozenge-shaped vile vortices spread over the world with what appears to be an extraordinary mathematical precision. 3 of them in a line between 30 degrees and 40 degrees north latitude, and 3 in a line between 30 degrees and 40 degrees south latitude. However, there are 10 altogether, placed around the globe in such a way that each is opposite another on the other side of the world. I do not wish to elaborate more on Sanderson's fantastic discoveries, as you should read his fascinating book for yourself. Suffice it to say that in nearly all these areas planes have mysteriously disappeared, ships have vanished or been found drifting without a trace of their crews. Whether the vile vortices are places where UFOs manifest from another invisible universe remains to be proven. All we can do is point out that these anomalies exist on the Earth's surface. Perhaps, one day we will know the answer. Nevertheless, although it is possible that some UFOs do come from other planets in our galaxy, perhaps, as we shall discuss in a later chapter, by traveling through what science fiction writers call hyperspace, it is now thought that many of the UFOs do emanate from invisible universes. That is what this book is all about. It is realized that you are being asked to stretch your thinking processes as never before, but I hope you will enjoy the exercise and stay the course. 15. Further thoughts on the paranormal. Considerable space in this book has been devoted to similarities in both UFO and psychic phenomena. We have taken several of the items listed by Captain Ivar Mackay in his Flying Saucer Review article, namely teleportation, levitation, materializations and dematerializations, precipitations, and finally, expansion and contraction of UFOs. Additionally, we have included 3 more chapters not listed by Captain Mackay, the effects on animals, telepathy, and we concluded with one on the windows. This finishes our study to show up a possible link between UFOs and the psychic world. This section of the book has not set out to definitely prove that there is a connection. In fact, like Captain Mackay in his article, we are only pointing up the similarities and have highlighted some examples of UFO activity which it was not possible for the author of the article in the review to do with the space at his disposal. However, we do feel that more than an a priori case for a connection between the two fields has been established. I have one thought to pass on to you for what it is worth. It seems that the same energy, radiation, call it what you wish, is the force used in all these phenomena, whether it is teleportation, levitation, materializations and so forth. I suggest that basically the same subtle force is being used, perhaps in a different way in all these aspects of the paranormal. The various phenomena seem to be interrelated. For instance, let us take telekinesis, one of the subjects listed in Captain Mackay's article to which we have not devoted a chapter. Telekinesis means the influence of an animate being on an inanimate object. In short, the ability, for example, to concentrate on a stone and cause it to move without touching it. This surely has a close connection with the ability of a ufonaut to place in a human being's mind an urge to go up a hill or to some other place that the latter had no intention of doing before receiving the impulse. Another interesting possibility that I have not broached before, is that the UFO nauts are able in some way to project mental pictures. A possible example of this might be found in the two extraordinary French sightings at Oloron and Gaillac described earlier. It has always struck me as quite uncanny how the same scene, the same actors, the same actions, without an iota of difference, was gone through at Gaillac, 10 days after the first identical sighting. There is something crying out to be learnt here, I feel sure. Now, it is up to researchers in both fields to take the matter further. An interesting thought is that it may ultimately turn out that all psychic phenomena actually emanate from the UFOs, and not the other way round, as is commonly supposed. After all, if the UFO occupants live in other spacetime continuums to our own and can manipulate psychic phenomena, then perhaps, they exercise more power over our destinies than we realize. John Keel, the American ufologist, in his book UFOs, Operation Trojan Horse, wrote that we are being manipulated by both the goodies and baddies alike, and that some sort of cosmic mental battle is going on for the control of the minds of mankind. There may be some truth in all this, but mankind does have some free will, limited though it may be, and if he keeps his thoughts and consciousness tuned into the highest state of awareness that is in his capacity, then it is possible to be master of one's own destiny.